Good afternoon. My name is Ray Hinton. I'm a member of the philosophy department here at PC and the director of the Providence College Humanities Forum. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this afternoon's very special event. The Humanities Forum, an initiative of the Providence College Humanities Program, provides a regular space on Friday afternoons, most weeks of the semester, for the entire campus community to come together and consider some of the most important issues we face as human beings. Today's event is particularly important in this regard and is especially timely given the recent discussion in the Catholic Church surrounding the death penalty. In a moment, we will introduce our guests, but first, please join me in welcoming to the podium Providence College's acting president, Father Ken Sicard.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to welcome all of you to Providence College, our students, our faculty and staff, and our guests from the community. And I want to thank Dr. Hain and his colleagues for the Humanities Forum. It's a great opportunity for all of us to reflect on some of the deepest issues that confront us as human beings, and it's so consistent with what we try to do here at Providence College. And today's speaker embodies this beautifully. Anthony Ray Hinton is a touching, powerful, inspirational man. His story is beautiful, and he has so much to teach us on suffering and joyfulness, even in the most dire of circumstances. And Mr. Hinton, we are honored by your presence today, and welcome to Providence College.
Thank you, Father Sicard. Please now join me in welcoming to the podium Professor Patrick Breen, a member of the Providence College History Department and the Humanities Forum Committee, who will introduce this afternoon's guest.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Father Sicard, and thank you for coming out to this very special event. Now in the fourth year, the Humanities Forum has been bringing scholars, intellectuals, and artists from across the globe to Providence College. For many of you, this is your first Humanities Forum. Welcome. I hope it won't be your last. Next week, we'll have University of Maryland professor Rick Bell, who will be presenting Redemption in the Underground Railroad, drawn from his forthcoming book. Unlike certain speakers, he may not have Oprah pushing you to read his book, but it's well worth your time, and many of the issues he brings up are the same ones we're going to be working on today. Join us. Make this Friday afternoon event a regular part of your Friday afternoons. And when you come for the Humanities Forum, don't just come for the talk. Stay for the reception. If you are a student, introduce yourself to a faculty member whose class you're considering taking, or ask that charismatic speaker who seems like such a good man, if it's really true what you've heard, that he roots for the Yankees. Today, our reception's going to be different, a little bit different than usual. Let me just go over some logistics. In the back of the room, to wave, we've got booksellers. We have 150 copies of Anthony Ray Hinton's book, The Sun Does Shine. And I encourage you to buy a book. Mr. Hinton will be signing them in the back. So if you are interested in getting this and you don't have a copy or you didn't bring your own copy, please don't let that stop you. Buy one. Or if you need to get a present for your parents for Christmas, it will fit. Even after you've gone through the queue, though, I want to invite you to come across the hall to the fishbowl, which is where we will have a reception. So you don't have to leave immediately. You can come join us for a reception to talk about what we've heard today. Anthony Ray Hinton was born in Alabama, the youngest of 10 children. After high school, he ended up working in the mines, but hated the job, and he bounced around until July 31st, 1985, when he was arrested for a series of murders that had taken place in Birmingham, Alabama. In an unjust and a flawed trial, he was quickly convicted and sentenced to death. even though there was no reliable evidence that linked him to the crimes, even though he could show that he was working in a warehouse at the time the murder was committed. Hinton spent the better part of the next 30 years as an innocent man living on Alabama's death row. Released on April 3rd, 2015, Hinton has written The Sun Does Shine, a remarkable memoir about his time on death row. One does not need to read The Sun Does Shine to figure out that death row is probably not a great place to be. But Hinton describes it vividly. It was uncomfortable, noisy, full of unimaginable smells. The food was, not surprisingly, terrible. And Hinton, a man who grew up loving his mother's cooking, remembered, "I was hungry every day." It was a physical hunger, yes, but also a mental hunger. I felt empty and hollow. I hungered for home, for my own bed, and my family, and my church. I was hungry for my freedom. I was hungry for my dignity. I was hungry to be human again. I didn't want to be known as inmate Z468. I was Anthony Ray Hinton. People called me Ray. So if you'd allow me, I'd like to introduce to you Anthony Ray Hinton, a man whose story of love and faith and forgiveness gets to the heart, I think, of what the Humanities Forum represents. And before I bring him up to the podium, we want to show you a short video. So. If you would please join me in welcoming Anthony Ray Hinton.
Hell. 30 years of pure hell because I was born black and poor. I wish I could look you in the eye and tell you that race had nothing to do with me being convicted and sentenced to death. I wish I could tell you that having money had nothing to do with me going to death row. But the lack of having money had everything to do with me going to death row. I never will forget how this started. I don't know how many of you ever been to the state of Alabama in July, but I'm finna give you some free advice. Do not come to Alabama in July. It is far too hot. But on a hot day in July, approximately 115 degrees, I went inside to get some of my mother's lemonade. As I was pouring this lemonade, my mother looked at me and she said, "Are you going to revival tonight?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." Well, in the South, we say yes, ma'am, out of pure respect for our elders. And I said, "Yes, ma'am," and I got that lemonade and I went outside. I drank the lemonade, and 15 minutes later, I carried my empty glass to put in the sink, and there my mother was again, still in the kitchen. She said, "What time do revival start tonight?" I said, 7 o'clock, Mama. She looked at the clock on the wall, and she said, "Well, you got time to go out there and cut that grass." I dropped my head. And I said, "Mama, I promise you tomorrow I will cut that grass." My mother looked at me and she said, "I'm trying my best to see how did you get you'll cut the grass tomorrow out of me telling you to go cut the grass." And my mother gave me a look that only she could give me, and I knew exactly what that look meant. And she finally said, "Boy, you better get out there and cut that grass." And I goes outside and I fire up the old lawnmower, begin to cut the grass. And 25 minutes into cutting the grass, I just happened to look up. And there stood two white gentlemen that I never seen before. I cut the lawnmower off and I said, "Can I help you?" One of them replied, "We're looking for Anthony Ray Hinton." I said, "That would be me. Again, how can I help you?" They identified themselves as two detectives from the Birmingham Police Department. And I said, "Okay, again, how can I help you?" They said, "Well, we have a warrant for your arrest." And I said, "For what?" One of the detectives said, "We'll explain that to you later, but right now, we want you to put your hands behind your back." I complied. I put my hands behind my back. They put the handcuff on me and began to put me in the squad car. And I said, "Hold up. At least allow me the opportunity to go in and tell my mother I'm being arrested for something." The detective said, "We can't let you go back inside." And we argued for about 2 minutes. And finally, the other detective said, "Let him go in and tell his mother he's being arrested." I go inside and I didn't say a word to my mother. I just showed her the handcuff. And like any good mother, she began to scream and holler, "Why are those handcuffs on my baby?" The detective said, "Take him outside while I talk to his mother." A few minutes later, he came, got in the car, and we proceeded to go to the county jail. And on our way there, I asked the detective, "Why am I being arrested?" Would never say a word. Finally, he turned around and he said, "Anthony, do you own a firearm?" And I said, "No." He said, "Do your mother own a firearm?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "What kind?" And I told him. They dropped me off at the substation and went back to my mother's house, and she gave them the gun in question. They picked me up and they proceeded to go to the jail once again. I must have asked these detectives at least 50 times, "Why am I being arrested?" and never would respond. And as they drove a little further, I asked for the 51st time. And this seemed to set the detective off, and he looked at me and he said, "We are arresting you for first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnapping, first-degree attempted murder." I said, "But I haven't done any of that." The detective said, "Let me make something clear to you right now. I don't care whether you did or didn't do it, but I want you to know one thing. I'm going to make sure that you're found guilty of it." I said, "For a crime that I didn't commit." He said, "You must have a hearing problem. Didn't I just tell you I don't care whether you did it or didn't do it?" He said, "But you remember this if you remember nothing else. I'm going to make sure you're found guilty of it." And as we drove a little farther, the detective said, "And by the way, there's 5 things that are going to convict you. Would you like to know what they are?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Number 1, you're black. Number 2, a white man is going to say you shot him. Whether you shot him or not, I don't care." He said, "Number 3, you're going to have a white prosecutor. Number 4, you're going to have a white judge. And number 5, you're going to have an all-white jury." He said, "And do you know what that spells?" And he repeated the word conviction, 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 conviction. And as we got to the county jail, they put me in this room for about 2.5 hours. He came back later and said, "Anthony, is there something you want to tell me?" I said, "Detective, if you don't mind, tell me the date and the time these crimes took place." He went in his note and he told me the date and the time. And I said, "Thank you, Jesus. I said, it couldn't have been me. I said, you can call my supervisor. Here's his phone number. Here's the address to where I was working on that particular night in that particular time. And I said, thank you, Jesus, again, because my supervisor was white. The detective left me, and about 4.5 hours later, they came back and they informed me. They said, we have good news and bad news. The good news is we no longer going to charge you with first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnap, first-degree attempted murder. Your alibi checks out. You was at work. He said, but now we have decided to charge you with 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. I said, but I haven't killed anyone. He said, didn't on the way here I told you I didn't care one way or another? Didn't I tell you I don't care whether you did it or didn't do it? He said, the same things is for these charges. And as I talked to the detective, he looked at me and he said, Anthony, let me tell you something. I truly believe that you didn't commit the crime. He said, but y'all is always taking up for one another. Take this rep for your homeboy. With tears coming down my eyes, I looked at the detective and I said, Detective, there's not a homeboy in this world that I would take a rap for like this. I sit in jail for 1.5 years. I goes before a judge. The judge reads me off the charges and asks me, can I afford an attorney? And I tell him no. He looks back in the courtroom and he calls this attorney to the front and tells this attorney that they want him to represent me on 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. Without even asking me my name, without even looking my direction, the lawyer looked at me and finally said, I did not go to law school to do pro bono work. I looked at the lawyer and I said, would it make a difference to you if I told you that I was innocent? The lawyer looked at me and he said, the problem with that statement is all of y'all is always saying you didn't do something when you did something. And this is the lawyer that I had to entrust to defend me. True, they had my trial and they found me guilty of 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. The judge proudly stood up and said, Anthony Ray Hinton, you have been found guilty of 2 counts of capital murder. It is the order of this court that I sentence you to die. And that judge had the audacity to say, may God have mercy on your soul. The prosecution ran out and told the media that today the state of Alabama got the worst killer that ever walked the streets off the streets. But it wasn't true. And on December the 16th, 1986, they transported me to Holman Correction Facility where they housed death row inmates. And for the next 3 years, I didn't say a word to another human being. How is it that we can live in a society that we're willing to put innocent men not just on death row, but to execute them? How is it that we have a system that if you don't have the money to hire a qualified, decent attorney, you can find yourself on death row? Let me say this to you today. In the state of Alabama, they have white young men on death row as well. Believe me when I say that you are not exempt in the state of Alabama for being put on death row. But for the next 30 years, I had to learn somehow to live within that cell of 5 by 7. How does one live for 30 years in a cell that is now bigger than your bathroom? How does one even begin to comprehend being in a cell that he knows that he shouldn't be in? For 3 years, I took my Bible. Rev, I took my Bible and I throwed it up under the bed. And I said God didn't live here anymore. What kind of God would allow an innocent man to go to death row? All my life, my mother had told me that God can do everything but fail. And now I found myself believing that God had failed me. What had I done so bad that he would leave me when I thought I needed him the most? 30 years I lived in pure hell. Didn't have a lawyer because the state of Alabama drops all lawyers during your post-conviction. And one day, I sit on my bed and I looked at my body and I told my body that the mind had to leave. I had tried to escape physically, but I couldn't find a way to escape physically, so I decided that I would escape mentally. I looked at my body and I told my body that the mind had to leave, and it was as though my body looked up at me and said, "Do you promise to come back?" And I said yes. And it was when my body gave me permission to leave. Of all the places in the world to travel, for whatever reason, I wanted to go see Queen Elizabeth. Please do not ask me why a 29-year-old black male wanted to go see Queen Elizabeth. I don't know. But all I know that I wanted to see the Queen, and in my mind, I showed up at the palace and I told the guard to tell the Queen that I was there. And the Queen told the guard to show me in. I went in and I introduced myself to the Queen. The Queen and I sit down and began to talk. We talked about Prince Charles, Prince Harry, Prince William, and of course the tragedy of Prince Di. And in this conversation, the Queen realized that she hadn't offered me anything to drink. And finally the Queen looked at me and she said, "Mr. Hinton, would you like some tea?" And I told the Queen I would love some tea. And she said, "What would you like in your tea?" And I told her a spot of lemon. The Queen told the butler to go out and bring some lemon. I put the lemon in my tea, and that's when I realized that I could leave anytime I wanted to leave. I did something while I was on death row that I said I would never do. I decided that I would get married, and I married the beautiful and talented Halle Berry. In my mind, Halle Berry and I stayed married for 15 long, beautiful years. And then one day, the prison did something that it had never done for death row inmates. They showed us a movie, and the movie was called Speed. And there I saw the beautiful and talented actress, Sandra Bullock. And in my mind, I'm looking at Halle sitting there, and I'm looking at Sandra Bullock, and I'm looking both ways, and as though I'm at a tennis match, and I'm trying to build my nerves up to tell Halle some sad news. I'm looking at this woman driving this school bus. I'm thinking about escaping all the time. Finally, I looked at Halle and said, "Halle, I'm going to divorce you, and I'm going to marry Sandra Bullock." I figured if a woman could drive a bus the way that she was driving that bus, imagine what she could do with a getaway car. And then this lawyer was standing there. The lawyer tell me he's from Boston. And I said, "Who sent you from Boston?" He tell me a lawyer by the name of Brian Stevenson. And I tell this lawyer, I don't know Brian Stevenson. And this lawyer from Boston tells me how great and how good Brian Stevenson is. And I said, well, he can't be that good because he have already made one fundamental mistake. I said, "Did you not say you're from Boston?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, see, he had this great Mr. Brian Stevenson check with me before he sent you to Alabama. He would have known that I am a beloved Yankee fan. And there's no way a Yankee fan and a Boston fan could ever do anything together." I said, "But for your sake, I'm willing to put my personal feeling aside and let you work on my case." And for the next 3 years, this lawyer from Boston worked on my case and came back every year to tell me what he was trying to do. And in the 4th year, he came back and he said, "Anthony, I can get you a life without parole." And I looked at him and I said, "Get who a life without parole?" He said, "You." I said, "Life without parole is for guilty people, not innocent people." I said, I am perfectly willing to die for something that I didn't do. I said, all my life I've been taught to stand up for what you believe in. I said, there's no way I could stand up and say I did something when I didn't do it. I said, if the state of Alabama is hell-bent on executing me for a crime they know that I didn't commit, so be it. I said, all of us have to leave this world at some point in some time. Believe me, I don't want to die for something I didn't do. But if that's the way it have to be, it have to be. And I looked at this lawyer and I said, and by the way, I have no choice but to fire you. He looked at me and he said, for why? I said, I need a lawyer that believes in me. I need a lawyer that is willing to go to jail for me if necessary. I said, you may not be able to understand what I'm about to tell you. I said, but I was 12 years old, and I never forgotten what my mother told me. My mother at 12 years old told me that if you man enough to bend down and pick up a rock, and if you man enough to throw that rock, then you should be man enough to say you throw that rock. I said, this is one rock I didn't throw. Therefore, I could never stand up and say I did it when I didn't. And as he was walking out the front door and they was taking me back, something in my mind said, you got to be the dumbest person on earth. You fired the only lawyer that you had. And just as that thought entered my mind, another thought said, you did the right thing. Always stand up for principle. Always stand up for what you believe in. The next lawyer I got was Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson came to prison to see me. And I told Brian Stevenson that I was innocent. I said, I know that you hear this from every inmate in prison, but I am truly innocent. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I need you to do me a favor. He said, what is the favor? I said, I need you to hire a ballistic expert. Stevenson looked at me and he said, well, I was going to do that anyway. I said, no, Mr. Stevenson. I need you to hire a white man. I need this white man to be from the South. I said, Mr. Stevenson, you can go out and hire the best white female in the country, but her word is no good on the witness stand in the South. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I have lived in the South all of my life. And the South only recognize one of their own. Mr. Stevenson, you cannot hire a person of color. It has to be a Southern white man. And this Southern white man has to be the best of the best. This Southern white man, I need him to believe in the death penalty. But above all of that, I need this Southern white man to tell the truth. About 3 months later, I was informed to call my attorney. I called Mr. Stevenson and he told me that he had hired 3 of the world renowned experts. 2 of them live in Texas and 1 of them live in Virginia. He said, but I need to inform you that these 3 men are the best in the country. These 3 men only testify for the prosecution. Never have they testified for the defense. I said, Mr. Stevenson, did you remember to ask them, would they just tell the truth? He said, they said they would tell exactly what the evidence shows. They came to Alabama, they did their testing, and all 3 of them at different times concluded that the bullets that the state of Alabama said would match did not match. We took this evidence to 3 different attorney generals, and they refused to take 1 hour to re-examine the evidence. Finally, we took my case to the United States Supreme Court. 2 years after filing it to the United States Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court did something that it have never done in the history of the courts. All 9 justices ruled in my favor. And ladies and gentlemen, I stays up a lot of nights. But when I got word that Clarence Thomas ruled in my favor, that keeps me up at night. They sent it back to the state of Alabama and told Alabama that I was entitled to a new trial. The state of Alabama carried me to court, told the judge that they had lost the gun in question. The judge gave the state of Alabama time to find the gun. We goes back to court. They informed the courts that they found the gun, but they had lost the bullets. She gave them more time to find the bullets. And while they was thinking they was looking for the bullets, the prosecution asked one of his experts for 30 years ago to come back and re-examine the bullets. He looked at the bullets and he was quoted as saying, "The bullets do not match the way they did 30 years ago. But I promise you that those bullets match the same that they did 30 years ago. Those bullets, it's like fingerprints, they never changed. My life was not worth the state of Alabama telling the truth." The prosecution was quoted as saying on the day that I was convicted, "We didn't get the right nigger today. But at least we got a nigga off the street." Every 2 years, I tried to petition the courts to hear my case and was turned down for 28 years. And finally, while the state of Alabama realized that they no longer could hang on to that lie, the state of Alabama informed the judge that they was dropping all charges against me. I had gave up 30 years of my life for a lie. But then, 15 years into doing those 30 years, I had decided then that I would forgive those men that had plotted, convicted me, and was just waiting to pull the switch to execute me. I forgave them not because they emailed me or text me or even wrote me a letter or phone call. I didn't forgive them so they could sleep good at night. I forgave them so I could sleep good at night. 30 years of pure hell. If you had the fortune to read this book, while I was on death row, I realized that even a fellow death row inmate could reach and help another death row inmate. The humanity in me made me reach out to my fellow death row inmate and tell them that there is hope. I realized that when someone take your hope away from you, you have nothing. But I refuse to let the state of Alabama take my hope. Not only did I try to give encouragement, but I started my own book club on death row. I wanted the men to know what it felt like to be free in reading a book. I wanted them to know what it felt like to be in California, but yet you live in Alabama. I wanted them to know that humanity has no color. Humanity have no certain place to reach out. On death row, I figured those men needed more than anyone because you as a society had condemned them and said that this world would be a better place without them in it. I realized something a long time ago, that none of us should ever want the death penalty. Because I am a true believer that what affects me today could very well affect you tomorrow. You very well could move in a state or get a job in a state that has the death penalty, and you could find yourself being transferred and sentenced to death. Everybody want to know, how is it that I can forgive after being locked up in a cage for 30 years? All of my life, I tried to follow the teaching of Jesus. And all of my life, the only thing that I read about Jesus was that he did everything to help others. Then, while I on death row, I came across a man in this book that was a Ku Klux Klansman. From the day that he was conceived, his daddy was a grand wizard in the Ku Klux Klan, a man by the name of Benny Hayes. Taught his son every racial slur in the book. Oh, it sounds good when we say that it takes a village to raise a child. And I am often asked, where was that village when Henry Francis Hayes needed to be saved? My niece read my book for the first time, and she called me as though someone was kicking her door down. Uncle Ray, I want to know, how is it that you can befriend a Klansman? How is it, knowing what he did, how could you become his friend? And I said, let's examine what he did. Yes, what he did was horrible. At the order of his daddy ordered him and 2 other Klansmen to go out and kill the first black they come across. They came across a 19-year-old black male. They befriended him and got him in the car, and they killed him. They threw a rope across a wire and hung him. Hanging him wasn't enough. Then they took their knife and cut off his genitals. Took his genitals and put it in his pocket. And when Henry Francis Hayes came to death row, I didn't know who Henry Francis Hayes was. All I know, I had been talking to someone that I couldn't see, and I had befriended this man. And going into about the 5th or 6th year, another inmate said, do you know who you're talking to every day? And I said, no. He said, you're talking to a Klansman. Don't you know about the case where they hung this black? And I said, that's who that is? He said, yes. I goes back to my cell and I said, hey, Henry, why you didn't tell me who you were? Henry said, would it had made a difference? I thought for a moment and I said, no, Henry, it would not have made a difference. Because the humanity in me have to have compassion for everyone. I told you earlier that I am a follower of Jesus, and they tell me, and my Bible tells me, that on the day that they crucified Jesus, he finally looked up and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I looked at Hayes, and I asked my niece, I said, tell me, where was that village when Hayes was being mentally abused? Where was the teachers when he went to school and was using all kind of racial slur? Why didn't somebody say, are you being taught this at home? Nobody cared. So I befriended Hayes. And on the night of Henry Hayes' execution, there's 2 things they ask you on the night that you're going to leave this world. They ask you, what is your last meal request? And Henry said something profound, and I still laugh about it to this day. Henry wanted an 8-ounce steak. And I said, Henry, you ready to die, ain't you? He said, why you say that? I said, you ordered an 8-ounce steak. He said, yeah, that's what I want eat before I leave this world. And he said, well, Ray, what you want when that time comes? Excuse me. But I said, hell, Henry, what I want, they got to go to the forest and find it. I said, when they bring it back to me, that ain't what I said. I said, I'm going to try to make it as difficult for them as I possibly can make it. I said, Henry, an 8-ounce steak? He said, that's what I want. Henry ate his steak, and at 12:01, they began to execute Henry, and they asked him, did he have any final words? Henry said, all of my life, my father told me a lie. All of my life, my community told me a lie. All of my life, my mother told me a lie. Henry said, the very people that my mother, my father, my community taught me to hate are the people that taught me what love really is. Tonight I leave this world knowing what true love feels like. And he put the electric chair to Henry, and Henry was killed. But before Henry left this world, through my humanity, I wanted to show Henry another side of hate. I had shown Henry a side of love because, as strange as it may sound, Henry lost his mother and his father on death row. They was visiting him, and both of them had a heart attack right there on the road. They cleared off the visiting yard, and later they told Henry his mother and father had died. And all of us rallied around Henry to show him love, to show him compassion. Today I ask you, when should we show compassion? When should we bring out the humanity that's lived in all of us? Do we only do it when there is a disaster? Every day I wake up, I try to show humanity. Humanity don't always have to be about money or anything. Sometimes show your humanity by just saying, have a great day. Good morning. How are you? Humanity is something that I truly believe that we have to be taught. The reason I was like I was on death row is because my mother taught me to have compassion for everyone. My mother told me that in life, everybody won't like you, but those are the ones that you must learn to pray for. Those are the ones that you must learn to love in spite of. I didn't know any of those men on death row. But just like I was there for something I didn't do, I had to ask myself, is there any others here for something that they didn't do? And then I had to ask myself, who are we to decide who should live and who should die? Well, all of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God. All of us have humanity inside of us, but we decide when we want to give it and who we want to give it to. I give it to everybody that I meet. I give it every morning, every day, all day. Sometime I told you that I believe that laughter is good for the soul. To me, this takes humanity to make someone laugh. It takes humanity to make someone feel good when they're having a rough day. 30 years of pure hell, I don't even think about the men that did this to me, because in my humanity, it have brought me nothing but joy. I have been able to visit England, not in my mind, but since I've been out, I've been to England 3 times. I sit down and I had real tea with the Queen, not the fake Queen. And now, next year, I'm going to do an animated movie with the Queen. Oprah Winfrey is going to turn this book into a movie. That's what humanity do for you. When you give, look for nothing in return, but I promise you that it will come back to you. It will bless you more than you ever could imagine. Who would have thought someone that sit on death row for 30 years would swim with billionaires and go to a place called Nectar Island where they charge $20,000 a night? And I was able to do it free. I love that word, free. Because of my humanity, God saw fit to bless me to get to know Sir Richard. I've got pictures in my phone that I can prove to you that I'm taking and playing basketball with George Clooney, and I beat his socks off. I got pictures of him with no shoes on because I played basketball when I was in high school and was pretty good at it. Humanity will give you more than you ever thought of giving. Who would have thought that I would sit on Oprah Winfrey Ranch in Hawaii and talk about a movie? Every one of you have the ability to change this world. Everyone in this audience has the ability to reach out and help someone. It is the humanity in us that should make you want to do for others. While on death row, there was some couldn't read, and I said, let me read the book to you. And then you tell me what you think the book is saying. Who would have thought that a Ku Klux Klansman would read a black author book? And who thought that a Klansman would stand up and tell me his honest opinion what the book was about? I said, Henry, I want you to read James Baldwin, Go Tell It on the Mountain. Henry read that book. Henry was proud to read that book. It was as though Henry had been freed by coming to death row. But I am often asking myself and wondering why no one in that community had enough humanity to help this child. I am wondering why is it that all that goes on in this country, why those of us who truly believe in humanity, who truly believe in compassion, why we are not standing up and saying enough is enough? Why are we not helping one another? Why are we wasting our precious time? For 3 years, I made those 200 men on Alabama death row a promise. I told them that I would go wherever I could go. I would try to change as many hearts that I could change in order to do away with the death penalty. I have been running for 3 long years. And everywhere I go, I meet someone that seems to need a little more humanity than I thought that I would have to give. But I reach deep down inside of my soul, and I give those persons that need it more than others a little more than they ask for. Why is it that we been given a blessing, and yet we refuse to use it? In this book, I promise you one thing. If you buy it, and if you don't like it, the universe will roll out and will pay you your money back, because I won't do it. But I want you to know that every one of us in here has a greater calling. Every one of us in here has humanity that we can give someone else. I often ask in my book, if you're drowning, does it matter what color the hand that is trying to save you from drowning? Humanity is something that we all desperately need from one another from time to time. Some of you A students and B students, and God knows we C students and D students, we need confidence and we need someone to pick us up. But even your A students, every now and then you get a little down. Think about how nice it would be if someone came and said, it's going to be okay. Think about humanity in a way that you never thought about it before. Call your grandparents, call your mother, your father, and just tell them you were thinking about them and you love them. That's humanity. That's how it began. That's how you start learning to tell others that you love them and have a great day. In this book is so many wonderful chapters. In the very end of this book, I put every man and woman name that is on death row. These men and women deserve compassion and humanity like anyone else. Every day in this country, good people go out and make bad decisions. Sometimes it would cost you your life. Sometimes it would cost you to stay in jail longer than you should. But you still deserve some compassion. You still deserve humanity from your friends and your family. I am so proud that in this book, I introduced you to a friend of mine. He was 4 and I was 6. We've been the best of friends for 60 years. He drove 500 and some mile round trip every week to see me. He had this big old Escalade. And when gas got over $5 a gallon, it didn't stop him from coming. The humanity in him would not allow him not to come. And as I got out, I'm going to tell you this, and I shouldn't tell you this, but I don't mind you laughing at me. I got in this beautiful Escalade. And as I sit in this Escalade, the two of us, he looked at me and he said, where do you want to go? I said, I want you to take me where they laid my mother's body. I know she's not there, but I want to go see. And he said, okay. I buck up. And as we was going down the road, a white lady came on and said, in 1/10 of a mile, turn right. I said, what the hell? I said, hey, white lady back there. He laughing. I said, did you hear what she said? And for a moment, they're being just released. I'm thinking they finna carry me back to prison, and they used my best friend to set me up. This white lady is a police lady. I was too afraid to look back. He laughing. He can't take it anymore. He pulls over to the right. He said, that white lady, she up here. I said, how the hell she get in there? He said, I told you that everything have changed since you've been locked up. This is called a GPS track. I said, what? He said, this white lady will tell you exactly where to go and how to get there. I said, you mean to tell me? I said, is she laying down? He said, no, it's ran by a satellite and it's a record. All you have to do is punch in the address and the satellite will tell you and this woman's voice will come on. It can be anybody's voice, it could be any. He said, I told you the world had changed. I said, modern technology is what's going to destroy this world. Because man tends to push the elevator. I said, you telling me that you no longer have to stop at the filling station and ask for direction? I said, no. All you need to know is the address. I said, what is her name? He said, you can call her whatever you want, but she will get you to wherever you're going. I said, okay. Got back on the road, and before we pull off the road, she kept hollering something that I never, to hear lately, understood. She kept saying, return to the route, return to the route, return to the route. I said, what the hell is she saying? He said, I don't got off course. He said, I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm saying all of this to show you that by telling you that story, I just gave you humanity. I gave you a moment of laughter. Today I ask you, when you leave here, spread that humanity to someone who truly needs it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Hinton has agreed to take questions, and so if you do have a question for Mr. Hinton, there are microphones on the side of the room. So if you do have a question, please feel free to come up. It's always the first one.
No, but I'm sure hoping to get her to play in my movie, though. You can believe that. That would be a dream come true. I want to apologize to Hallie as well as Sandra Bullock. I want them to know that not once, did I use my mind for anything other than positive thinking. And I wanted them to realize that by using them, I was able to do my time, and I want to thank them for allowing me, as we would say, for doing my time. And I just feel that I owe them an apology for using them in my imagination. And both of them was an excellent wife, and I have went back to being 12 again. I decided that I'm gonna stay single, and both of them showed me something in my imagination. What I loved about Holly, I didn't tell y'all, Halle Berry and Sandra Bullock was two of the most beautiful, perfect wife, if there's such a thing. What I love about both of them, didn't neither one of them spend any money. And I just loved it that about them. They wasn't trying to buy these Gucci bags and all of them rich bags. And I just love the fact that no matter what I said and what I wanted to discuss, they agreed to it. Imagine every wife of you single guys, I'm telling you, you should try it. It'll save you a whole lot of headaches. And so, but I really enjoyed being married to both of them.
We have a question over on this side.
Mr. Hinton, thank you. I can't thank you enough for
Thank you.
your beautiful book, for sharing your story. I can't imagine what how much it takes to do. I'm a mom of two young kids, and in the book, and your mom is so amazing and such an extraordinary figure. So I'm wondering, what did she do to help you? What do you hope that all moms are giving to the next generation?
Well, in this, I don't see any older ladies in here, but my mother was old school. When I was born, my mother could not spank you. My mama would whoop you. And I don't know if any of you in here have ever had a whooping, but my mother would whoop me, and then she would say, come here, give me a hug and say, I love you, and kiss me. And I used to tell my mother, Mama, if you love me, then don't love me. because that whooping, I don't want to get that. But I think as a mother, you need to give them honest advice. Let them know when they do something wrong that you don't agree with it, but you still love them. Somehow you must find a way to punish them in a way that they will understand why you punish them. Never, never stop loving them regardless of what they do as they get older. But my mom used to always sit down and talk to me about life. Being from the South, my mother used to talk to me more about racism than anything. But my mom always believed that we all are God's children. He made me who I am because that's who he wanted me to be. He made you who you are because that's who he wanted you to be. But we all can still love one another. But my mom used to sit around and give me nuggets like, you are responsible for how you treat others. You are not responsible for how they treat you. She would say, you're going to come across some people that don't like you simply because of the color of your skin. My mother never did say white. She never did say black. She said, you're going to come across some people that are going to dislike you simply because of the color of your skin. Those are the people that I want you to somehow find a way to love even more. Those are the people that I want you to pray for. I always want you to be better than the people that don't like you. And so my mom just brought me up in a way that most Southern bring their kids up, to respect one another, to have respect for our elders, to always say yes ma'am, no ma'am, as a form of respect. And so I would just tell you, if you've been blessed to have someone in your family of old school, bring them up that way and they won't go wrong. Look at yourself and do what your mother did to you. Thank you.
There we go. Any other questions?
Right there.
Hold on. One sec.
My name is Natalie. I wanted to ask, I know that you stressed the point of having lots of compassion, but in your years of incarceration, was there ever a point that it wasn't enough for you? Like you wanted to give up in your faith and what you believed in? Thank you.
Good question. And I did give up. When you know you're innocent, when at the age of 4, I've always been brought up in the church. In the South, children didn't have a say-so whether they go to church or not. Still don't. But in the South, Black Baptist Church would take you to Sunday school at 9 a.m. and keep you there till 6 p.m. And I used to tell my mom it ought to be against the law for y'all to hold us kids in church all day. Anyway, you got to go and kill lunch. We stand way too long. And so it was her teaching and my neighbor's teaching that taught me about God and how to have faith in him. And when I knew I went to death row for something I didn't do, I truly felt that God had failed me. I won't sit here and stand here and lie. And the Bible was the only book that they allow you to have in Alabama for at that particular time. And when I got to death row and they put me in this 5x7, I took this Bible that I've read countless of times from the back to the front, from the front to the back, and I've always tried to not just read it, but try to live it. But I took this Bible once the judge said, I sentence you to death. And when he said something that triggered my mind, and may God have mercy, and I said to myself, what God? God don't live here anymore. And so when I got to prison, I took that Bible and I throwed it up on the bed, and that's where it stayed for 3 years. And I had to get down on my knees to get something, and I seen this Bible, hadn't thought about the Bible. And I reached and got this Bible, and I began to wipe it off, and I got a wet rag, and I wiped it off real good and wiped the pages. Believe it or not, I still loved God, and I still believed in him. I was just angry with him. I was so angry with him. How could you allow me to come here when you know I didn't kill anyone? And I said earlier today that I truly believe God put me in that position for a reason so I could stand here today. But at that moment, I was not listening to reason. And as I was wiping this book out, I came across a scripture in the book of Mark 11, 24, 25, and 26, and it says, what things soever you desire when you pray, believe in them and you shall have them. And I said, oh, wait a minute. Oh, let me read this again. I read it and it said the same thing. What things soever you desire when you pray, believe in them and you shall have them. Well, most people would ask me, did you ever pray and ask God for your freedom? And for 30 years, I did not. I thought praying and asking God to free me would be selfish. I have never been selfish in my life, and to be honest with you, I don't like selfish people. I pray for selfish people. And I thought if I prayed and asked God to free me, that would be one of the most selfish things that I could do. I prayed and I asked God to let the truth come out. Because I knew if the truth come out, I would walk out with the truth. And I also knew that when you pray to God, you have to be very careful. Because I could have died of a heart attack. I could have died from a spider bite. I could have just died, and I asked to be free, and that one way of being free. And so I lost my, not faith, but I lost the connection that I once had with God. I kept my faith, but I just couldn't see myself talking to God for 3 years because I truly felt when I needed you the most, you wasn't there. And then when I came back to my senses, I realized for those 3 years that I wasn't talking to God, God was still keeping me. He was still blessing me. I was alive because he loved me. And God gave me, again, humanity to tell other death row inmates. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine trying to tell someone that had been condemned to die to have faith, to hold on. Imagine trying to tell that same person, good morning. I would get, man, what's so good about good morning? Why are you always waking up saying good morning? And I said, if you will allow me, I want you to think about something. I say good morning because it is a good morning. It's a great morning. I said, do you realize that we may be on death row, but for whatever reason, God saw fit to wake us up this morning? Do you realize that somebody that was out in the free world had all the money and all the materialistic things that they could want? They didn't wake up this morning, but they gone. I said, if you put it that way, you have something to be thankful for. We woke up. Yes, we still on death row, but we alive. Now think about the people that had money. They dead and gone. And I often tell people that ask me about religion, how big the party place. I've been to quite a bit of funerals since I've been out. I ain't seen a U-Haul behind a hearse yet. Because when you leave here, it's gone, really. You don't left it. And I tell people every day to enjoy what God has blessed you with. Share it if you have enough to share with someone else. That is how, and that is what I truly believe religion and faith is all about, helping your neighbors, helping a stranger. And I said earlier, I taste that because all of my life, read about Jesus, to be taught of Jesus. All he ever did is did humanity for another human being. And so, yes, I did lose my, not faith, but I lost contact with God for 3 years.
Seems like this side of the room is the one with all the questions. So,
Yeah.
Kate.
Hi, I'm Katie. How did you manage to condense 30 years into like a 300-page book? And how do you think Oprah is going to plan to condense that all into like an hour-and-a-half long movie?
Well, Oprah better go out, because at 29, I perhaps was the most handsome black male in America. I often tell people Denzel have nothing on me at the age of 29. But I don't know. When I was in prison and even on the street, I never read a book that was more than 300 pages. And I don't read books that is more than 300 pages because I tend to lose my concentration after 300 pages for whatever reason. And I realized that when I was on death row, most guys that had books, they was within 270, 280 pages. And so when I got out and was asked to do the book, and they wanted 500 pages, I said, I don't do 500 pages, I do you at least 300 pages, because the average person could read 300 pages within 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on how slow they read, depending on are they trying to really read the book and remember the book. And so I wanted to write the book where people could remember the book, remember the chapters, remember the characters. And so that 300 just stayed with me from when I was in the street. I don't think a thick book, why people write such a thick book, you're not going to read that. But everybody that read my book tell me it's just the right amount of pages. And so I said, I know, because I was an average reader before I got locked up for a crime I didn't commit. And so I just stayed with the 300 pages, and it seemed to be working pretty well. Now, since you said that, these are the people on this side gonna be in my movie. These people over here won't be in the movie, because they ain't asked no question. So that's it.
Well, I would ask you to join me again in thanking Mr. Hinton for coming.
Oh, she has a question. She got a question now. You gotta ask her a question. Yeah.
Okay, we got one last. We have a microphone, and we have one last question. It's a big one. It's the last one. There we go.
No pressure. I'm Lucille. I wanted to ask, how do you feel about stories like yours still happening to this day?
Great question. I think it is sad that even in 2017 that we still have a system that is badly flawed. Every day in this country, innocent men and women go to death row in every state that has a death penalty. I think that we as citizens should demand better. Regardless of how you feel about the death penalty, I think that you should want and demand that the right person goes to death row and just not anyone. We cannot guarantee that we haven't or will not execute an innocent person. And I say as long as we have a death penalty, we will, if we haven't already executed an innocent person. Because man is controlling who goes and who don't goes. I feel that we have a system that if you don't have the money to hire a decent defense lawyer, you could very well find yourself in prison. Justice should not be about who we can hire and who we can't hire. But we have a system that caters to the rich. They can be guilty, and yet we treat them better as if they was innocent. We treat the innocent because they are poor, worse than anyone we could treat. I often ask the question this morning, in the state of Alabama, we pay our school teachers $30,000 to $40,000 a year. And yet we spend $2 million to execute a man or a woman. And Alabama is supposed to be a conservative state. I often wonder what would we do if we did away with the death penalty and had life without parole. That would give those that are innocent all the time they need to try to prove they're innocent. We could take that money and we could hire more police officers, pay our school teacher a higher pay. We could put polices on the street like they did in, as I would say, back in the good old days. But for us to spend $2 million and we're not even making a dent on crime, I think is a waste of time and a waste of your taxpayer dollars. And so today I find myself wondering, what kind of system do you young people really want? Do you want a system where your children will be even worse than what I was at? And I ask all young people, I ask you to go to school and become lawyers, become judges, become senators, and help make this country better, to help make laws that is fair for everyone. Just because you're poor don't mean you should have to spend 30 years in prison for a crime you didn't do. In taking the words of Donald Trump, he said, I could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone, and I wouldn't lose a vote. As disgraceful as that may sound, in this system we have, and he being rich, he told the truth. He wouldn't spend a day in jail. But if you, the average person, the blue-collar worker, killed someone, they will set your bail where you can't make the bail. And I just think it's up to you young people to rise up and make a difference. The judicial system is nothing like you think it is. For those of you who had the privilege of watching Law and Order, that's Hollywood. System don't work that way. We need younger people to come up with better ideas. We need younger people to question the senators, the governor. And why are we wasting so much money in the state of Alabama where population is only 4 million people? We pay our judges the second highest than anywhere else other than New York, a state like Alabama. But yet Alabama would tell you they are the most conservative state in the United States. But yet they're not conservative when it comes to handling people, the taxpayer money. We waste more money in Alabama than I care to think about. Thank you for the question.